Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today is episode number 17. We are storytelling and talking about animal familiars. Good morning, and welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Our topic is a little more on the fun and playful side. It is about my animal familiars and animal familiars in general. So, first, I want to talk a little bit about my method of teaching, which is storytelling in this case. Storytelling is really important in shamanic work because there are a lot of things that we can only convey through a set of experiences that unfold for us. So I can talk theoretically about animal familiars, and you'll probably understand a little bit about what I mean. But by sharing a personal experience or a shared experience, or a witnessed experience, you will be able to better grasp the topic that I'm speaking about. So, storytelling is always going to be a big part of what I do on this podcast. I know things and experience things and can help other people with things through my personal experience. That is what makes me who I am. And the animal familiar story is no different. So, first, I want to define a familiar. I do not consider animals that work with us in spirit to be an animal familiar. I believe and I experience familiars as being animals that are existing on this 3D plane in a 3D body, and their sole reason for being here is to help us on our spiritual path. So we are a different level of bonded. They have a life mission, and it is to support us. That is very different than working with an animal spirit on the other side. Equally as important, but very different purpose. So that is how I would define a familiar. So I hope that through sharing my experience with animal familiars, you will have a better grasp of what this means and how to be open to your own familiars if you are not already. So first I'll kind of do a little bit of history. I did animal rescue for many years, both cats and dogs, foster, adoption, um, had my own rescue animals, and it's always been a big, important part of my life. It wasn't until I lost my two dogs last year, last October, that I started to understand more of what an animal familiar is. And there's a very big difference between owning dogs and being in collaboration with your dogs. I know that that might be a hard concept for some people to digest, but a lot of times animals that we have are karmic, or they're there specifically to do something for us or help us or reflect back to us. They're not there to be our familiar necessarily. So I'll talk about my dogs a little bit when I get to my current dog. But first, I'm going to start with my cat. So I have had cats before and they've been wonderful. The cat that I have now is a totally different caliber of animal relationship. About 3 or 4 years ago, I had a very intense soul retrieval experience. I was guided to go to a specific place and to stay there for multiple days. And upon arrival, I was put into a trance state and surrounded by spirits and ancestors and animals. And they conducted a soul retrieval on me spontaneously that lasted, I think it was like 12 to 16 hours. It was on my birthday. I had no idea what was happening. Even some of my teachers had quote unquote said it was impossible. But I did have this soul retrieval experience. And in this soul retrieval, I took back like a 3-year-old part of myself, and she was hiding in a closet. And she was there because she came home one day and her childhood cat was gone. And she was completely devastated. Nobody had told her what was happening. She did not know how to grieve this cat. And during the soul retrieval, that aspect of myself, this little girl, said, "You have to get a cat." That was really startling for me because my oldest daughter is allergic to cats. My ex-husband didn't really like animals, and to agree to this was a big kind of soul contract for me, right? I have this inner child who wants to come back to me, and she's telling me I must get a cat in order for her to stay, or she's going to leave again. This is one of those flags, like a big yellow flag that's okay, this is a magical part of you. Our inner children are always the most magical parts of us. And she wants to join me in this life right now, and she requires a feline in order to be here, or in order to be comfortable, or in order to be anchored. I'm not really sure. She didn't give me specifics on that, but she did say she would not stick around if I did not get a cat. So I made that agreement with her. I wrapped up the soul retrieval experience, spent a few days recovering, and then I headed home from where I was staying. And I told my family as soon as I got home, like, hey, there's a cat coming, just so you know. We hadn't had a cat in about 10 years. And then about 2 weeks after that, I had a dream. And my dreams I take them very seriously. They're very prophetic. Um, we'll talk about dreams in a different podcast episode. But in this dream, there's this beautiful black Maine Coon cat. And he feels like royalty, and he has presented himself, and he says, I am ready to be picked up. Okay, I wake up from the dream and I'm telling my family, like, guys, the cat's ready. Now, at this point in time, a few years ago, I was volunteering at the Humane Society down the street as a dog walker. And so I was familiar with the facility. I was familiar with the animals that were there at that time. And we went out and we bought all of the supplies for a cat. We're like, all right, this cat's coming. Let's go get everything we need to get for him. And we go down to the Humane Society as a family. And we get there, and there's of course not a black Maine Coon cat. Like, it is the most beautiful regal looking cat you could imagine. I was not expecting to get one of those at the Humane Society at this time, but we did see a number of cats that called to us, and there was one that was really obvious that it was our guy. He kept doing this like dive bombing thing in front of us. He would come up to us and then he would throw himself on the floor and roll over so that we could see his belly. It was very obvious that this was going to be our cat. He was extremely malnourished, long-haired, black and white cat, but we all knew. We all knew. And we did the whole adoption paperwork. I think we had to he had to be there for another day because he was recovering from surgery. And then we took him home. Now, over those months, my oldest child was going through a pretty horrendous, like, depression, suicide situation. The cat quickly became her cat. He spent a lot of time with her, and there was something that was going on a different level than what we understood. So that bond happened pretty much immediately, and I thought, okay, well, maybe he was for her. So we named him Bilbo Baggins. We call him Mr. Baggins. As he stays with us and he gets his health back and he gains some weight, this cat was part Maine Coon. So he has the black mane that goes around his neck like a Maine Coon cat. And he starts to fill out, and we're like, this is crazy. He's part black Maine Coon. And he's a wonderful cat. We have him for a few years, and then he has a major medical emergency. During that medical emergency, I was actually in Ireland doing some big excavation of pain and grief in my heart, preparing for my divorce. This cat is having these incredible issues. He racks up a $15,000 medical bill, goes through like 5 different surgeries, and while I'm in Ireland, I get the very clear message that he has cleared out karma on behalf of my family, on behalf of my marriage, and karma between my husband and the kids. Like, the cat came here to do that for us. It was a very unexpected and profound message to receive while I'm across the country, right? So I get back home, and the cat is doing well at this point. He's a completely different cat. The cat has gone through some kind of portal. He is forever changed. My family is forever changed. This is around the time that I knew, like, okay, divorce is here. It's time to get ready for this. And my kids start changing as well. And the cat was the catalyst for it. Mr. Baggins is wonderful now. He is perfectly healthy. He has gone through a sex change operation because he had to have some anatomy removed due to what he was dealing with. Um, but he's a completely different cat, and now he sleeps with me. And now when I have certain clients that I work with, he gets on the table with them. And he shows me little by little over the years that I've gotten to know him that he is some kind of facilitator of all things astral. So he helps me connect to places that are further away. He helps my clients connect to energies that are further away. And I can tell by how he interacts with people what kind of energy we're working with, what kind of medicine we're working with. Whenever I do something very interdimensional or very galactic, Mr. Baggins is the first one to be in the room. Every time I prepare to do a shamanic journey, which is, just the regular trance state where I'm talking to spirits, he comes and he runs and he jumps on my chest. The moment that I decide, I'm going to sit down and do a journey right now, he comes bolting in the room and sits on top of me. So this cat is super duper magical. I will be honest and say I actually don't understand fully what cats do. I can see them. They're definitely not from here. They're very humanoid and regal, and they have something to do with the astral ET magic or medicine. If somebody is allergic to cats, they typically have a resistance to the astral plane. So a lot of times women who are resistant to their witchy abilities, they will have an allergy to cats. Same with men, like that tends to be more of a resistance to like the fluid astral space. It's really interesting. And those allergies actually do resolve themselves when the resistance resolves itself. Now, there's a message there about allergies and what they really are. So, Mr. Baggins is a wonderful addition to the family. He is definitely one of my familiars, and I love telling the story of how he came to be with me. Now, my entire family has exited the picture. He's just my cat, and he works with my clients and with me on a regular basis. So, this is the story of Mr. Baggins. The next animal familiar that I'm going to talk about is Chad Michael. So I'll go back a little bit. I had two dogs for the last 13 or 14 years. They came into my life right after I got married. I was doing animal rescue, and I had one dog that we got on purpose. She was a St. Bernard mix, and that was a dog that came into our life when I was pregnant with my second child. And then we had a Anatolian Shepherd who was a foster failure. She refused to let anybody else handle her or feed her or anything like that. And so we ended up with these two dogs. Now, over the years, these dogs began to fight and we had to separate them. So they rotated who was out in the house every 4 hours. The new one would get to go outside and then be out in the house, and the other one would go back in the crate. And it was a horrendously taxing situation for all parties involved, for us and for the dogs. And we tried all the training and all the animal communication, and we could never resolve it. Turns out that the dogs were actually a metaphor for my marriage, which should have ended a long time ago. And all of that aggression towards each other was about my husband and myself. It was a lot of unprocessed aggression, um, resentment, anger, pain that had never been addressed. So the dogs were actually holding that for us. Now, I don't consider this to be a familiar. This is more of a karmic animal connection, would be the best way that I would describe it. So if we have things that we're not yet ready to look at, the animal will hold those things for us, reflect it for us. This actually does happen a lot with rescue, because even the idea of rescue is very much coming from a victim mentality. The more we feel compelled to like rescue these hurt beings. Now, I'm not saying rescue's bad. Like, first and foremost, it's not bad. But I know for me, where I was coming at from a rescue standpoint is like, let me save them all. Let me help those who can't help themselves. I mean, it was very much a victim mentality that was a result of me having unresolved victim energy within myself. And so that's how these dogs came to us. And so they were holding all of these emotions for my ex-husband and I, and they died last fall, so 14 months ago. And my ex and I have had this conversation, like, we knew that when the dogs died, our marriage was over for sure. Like we weren't really sure. We were hanging on. We were stuck in the toxicity. It was super comfortable. But the day that the dogs went, it was clear as day. Like, this is over. And the dogs were like the final threads holding things together. It was very interesting. So I find that that happens a lot with people and their animals. When I go into other people's houses for sessions, I can see the dynamic between them and their animals, and this like karmic, let me hold this energy, let me process this energy on your behalf. That is a very different situation than an animal familiar, and it's way more common. So that happened last year. I was done with the dogs. Like, I knew we were getting divorced. I didn't want vet bills. I wanted to be able to travel. Dogs were the last thing from my mind. Like, I was very content and very happy to not have hair to clean up in the house. It was great. They're gone for about 2 months, and I start walking into rooms and seeing a dog sitting on the couch, sitting on my bed. I'm like, what? Like, in spirit. I'm like, what is happening right now? There's a dog in the room. And then he'll leave. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I could feel a dog laying on my feet. I'm like, we don't have a dog anymore. What's going on? I would do ceremonies with clients. We did some kind of Nordic ritual, and everyone was supposed to invite in an animal spirit. And 2 or 3 of the people in the group was like, there's a golden retriever here. And I kept running into golden retrievers and people who were breeding them, and being welcomed by them on the hiking trail. Just, I was being bombarded by golden retrievers. And so when I combined that with the spirit of a dog that kept showing up in my house, I knew that it was going to be a golden retriever, which I have never allowed myself to want because I was so big on animal rescue. I'm like, breeders are terrible. I will never have a purebred unless it gets rescued. But this dog was trying to show me, like, I'm ready to come through and I'm going to be a golden retriever. And then I asked him what he wanted his name to be, and he said Chad Michael. And that was hilarious. And also super appropriate if you have met Chad. Um, so anyway, I'm fighting this because I do not want a dog. I can't afford one. Like, going through divorce, living on my own, there's no way. Even just the breeder fee is $2,500, which is crazy. And I managed to talk myself into it. I'm like, all right, if spirit is telling you you got to get a dog, then you got to get a dog, Nadia. So earlier this year, I went to Peru, and the day that I left for Peru, I had made the decision, like, I'm just going to commit to this dog. I'm going to do a fundraiser. I'm going to ask the community for help. I know I need to do it, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. And so I did that. I started a fundraising campaign, and I dropped off an application to this breeder that I had heard about from somebody else, that I ran into by accident. I dropped off an application with like a check for $100 on my way to the airport to go to Peru. And I brought a picture of a golden retriever puppy to put on the altar during my ceremonies. And I'm at the airport and I'm in the security line, and there is a golden retriever next to me. And she's laying there and she's beautiful. And I'm talking to the guy who's her handler, and they have just come from like a dog show. She's also a therapy dog. And he was like, I knew from the moment I got her, she wasn't a normal dog. It's like she has the spirit of a human. She listens, she acts like a human, she's not bothered by all this stuff. Like, she's not a normal dog. And he starts having this like really esoteric conversation with me. I find out that he's from Mexico City and he's also a golden retriever breeder. And I'm telling him about how I just dropped off an application for a golden retriever. And like, the magic of this whole experience could not be any more clear. The universe is telling me it's a go. Awesome. So I continue on with my journeys. I get approved for this puppy, and I'm the second one on the list. So that means that I get first pick of the boys. I know it's going to be a boy because he's already told me. And me and my kiddo, I have a 13-year-old who really, really struggles emotionally. He is a trans kid, and he's also very magical. And, he's on the shaman path, um, in so many ways. And he's so much farther ahead of me in so many ways. So I'm single mom now. I'm just living here with my 13-year-old, and he is elated that there is a puppy coming into our lives. So March rolls around and we get to go meet the dog. We get to go pick him out. The property is absolutely gorgeous in like rural Washington, about an hour and a half away from us. And we go there to meet the dogs, and we're like, okay, there are 10 little boy puppies here. How are we going to choose our dog? And a friend of mine had said, your dog will choose you. Just show up and pay attention. And that was the best advice I have ever received. So we show up at this breeder's place. We're sitting outside with all these puppies, letting them crawl all over us. It's like the best day of my life. I have never been so joyful ever. Um, it was a perfect day. So we're watching these dogs and they're so cute. And maybe like we're there for an hour. 30 minutes in, there's a dog that just won't leave my kid alone. Like he is super interested in Aiden and he keeps like circling back. And I'm like, no, this is not the dog that I want. His color is too light. Like, no, this is not what I had in mind. I had this big blocky head, beautiful toasted golden color in my mind. So I don't want this puppy that has chosen my child. And then he runs to the edge of the yard and he picks up a mouthful of leaves and he brings it and drops it in my kid's lap. This 6-week-old puppy has retrieved something for my child. And we both look at each other and we're like, did that really just happen? Yes, it did. The dog runs away to the other side of the yard and picks up a mouthful of something and he runs over and drops it in my lap. That was our puppy. That was Chad Michael. Um, we chose that puppy. We went to go pick him up 2 weeks later, and from the moment he entered our house, it was super, super clear that he's here to support us on a spiritual level that we do not understand. So, my kid, the one who struggles, Chad quickly became like his therapy dog. He has told me over and over again he can make it through the day because he knows he gets to come home to Chad, that he makes everything worth it, that he feels so much joy when he sees him. I didn't know that my kid would benefit from this interaction as much as he did. And their bond just continues to get stronger and stronger. So that's kind of the first piece to it. The second piece is when I start bringing the dog around my clients, it is very, very clear that he is like dropping little bombs of light. Like he checks in on every person in the group. He pulls people out of situations at exactly the moment they need to be pulled out of. His presence of love and joy is so big that on several occasions I have caught myself just sitting there crying because I'm so overwhelmed with all the love that I don't know what to do with it. And that's a really hard thing to reconcile in my mind. I've been overwhelmed by a lot of emotions before to the point of like shutdown or crying, but to have it be of joy and love is it's kind of silly and crazy and also, important. It's important to notice that within myself. Like this love is so big, I don't even know what to do with it. And that's been kind of a theme for me over this year is allowing myself to feel and receive love that is kind of a next level love. It's very exciting. So Chad at this point is 9 months old. Um, so far, I have seen him do some really crazy things working with my clients. Like he laid down next to one of them for 3 or 4 hours at one point while she was processing some things. He got up and he could barely stand on his legs. He walked over and he threw up and then he passed out for a couple hours and he woke up after that and he was like good as new. So he does purge on behalf of other people. He does take things that need to be devoured, sort of like I do in my shamanic work. The spirits have called me a sin eater on more than one occasion where I can take darkness from people and I can literally eat it and it dissolves inside my heart. So Chad does something along those lines as well. I've also seen him like he does this connecting thing in group dynamics where he's connecting the group to each other, where he's like weaving threads of light, where he's comforting, where he's breaking patterns or stuckness around people. It's really cool. As I get to know him on a personal level, he's kind of transforming into this solid masculine energy for me. Though masculine isn't quite the right word, it's something between a dragon and a dinosaur. Like, it feels very solid, it feels very grounded, it feels very much like I got this. And also there are facets of it like aggression, like dominance, some characteristics that I'm not typically used to dealing with because I've never had this energy in my life before. Um, but he's definitely playing that role for me at this point and moving forward. And so we talk about maintaining and cultivating this connection or cultivating a deeper connection with our animal familiars. I would say that you certainly could go into shamanic space to talk to them, like altered space where you're intentionally meeting with the spirit of your animal, and animal communicators will do this. But my personal preferred way to work with my familiars is in the day to day. It's in taking the time to like it almost feels like a telepathic connection, where you can almost hear their voice in your head, kind of like a baby crying, except when they look at you what they want and what they need. Um, and that comes with listening. It comes with taking the time and space to connect with them on a deeper level. So I do have a lot of time that I spend like eye gazing with the dog and like telling him how beautiful he is because he loves that. Um, Learning what he enjoys, what he needs more of, when he gets frustrated, like not just having him be an accessory to my life, but having him be a partner, somebody that I collaborate with, making sure that he has his needs met, recognizing his strengths and his weaknesses, spending one on one time with him that's not in a distracted state. So, like, of course, I sit and watch TV with him sometimes, but I also make sure that we do have like direct contact, direct play, direct dialogue, and that's really all that's needed. And if you think about like how much time do we actually spend with our pets just being with them, like you would with a friend, right? If you're deepening a friendship, you wouldn't sit next to them on the couch and just like watch TV and hold their hand or pet them without having deep connection and communication. Like, that's not how you build a friendship. So that's also not how you would build the friendship with your familiar. You have to have ongoing direct contact and cultivation of like a deeper connection. So those are my two familiar stories. We have Mr. Baggins and Chad Michael. I have really gotten a lot out of these relationships, and on a daily basis, they continue to unfold for me. I continue to understand more deeply what they're here to do and how they're here to support me. And it really is kind of a next level relationship that you can have with the animals in your life. If you're looking to have an animal familiar or it's something that resonates with you deeply, what I would recommend starting with is some inner child work. So, the inner child, as I said previously, is the magical part of ourself. There's usually multiple parts that are magical, um, but it's the inner child that's going to connect with the familiar. And so, if you're wanting this to come into your life, but it hasn't presented itself, that's where I would recommend starting. It can also be really helpful to have a guide, like a shamanic practitioner, to guide you on a journey to your familiar, or asking why one hasn't come through. Is this going to be part of your spiritual path? Do you have a different path with regards to animals? Or even if you just want to learn more information, it's really helpful to go talk to your guides on the other side or the animal spirits about what a familiar is, about how to engage in that dynamic, or how to be open to it. So, thank you for joining me on this podcast today. I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.